Okay, so the remaining shapes on this exercise are going to require us to use some different tools and some different strategies. So by the end, you're going to be pretty well versed in the basic tools of SketchUp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete, I'm going to just triple click to select that. I'm going to delete that first shape, and I'm going to get started on the next shape. So this next shape is a cylinder, right? And a cylinder is essentially just an extruded circle. So here under the Shapes toolbar, I'm going to select Circle. And when I select Circle, you can see down here I'm prompted to select the center point. So they first want me to click to choose the center of the circle, and then they want me to indicate the radius of the circle. But I need to first make sure that that circle is going in the right orientation. So right now that circle is being created kind of about the blue axis, right? And I could see that from the blue preview and from its orientation. Right? Now the circle for this particular cylinder shouldn't be on the blue axis or the red axis. It should be on the green axis. And I hope you noticed that when I start a circle or any shape, if I wanted to get out of that shape, right, I made a mistake, or I no longer want to be in this circle command or any command, I can just hit escape. Okay? I can do that to kind of reset. So I want this circle to be created about the green axis, but I don't want the circle to be created right on my shape. And sometimes when I'm drawing in space like this, it's hard to get it to be on the green axis, right? This time it worked, but it's not always going to be that easy. So one thing you can do is you can reference an existing shape. So right now I have this green preview. When I have this green preview, I can hold Shift. When I hold Shift, it's going to lock the circle in this orientation. So I'm able to drag out, click again, and I can choose my radius of 2, right? Because I have a 2-inch radius for this cylinder. Now if you notice, this cylinder has it's basically 2 concentric circles, right? So I've started with this outside circle, and I need a second circle on the inside with a radius of 1. Now I can make this circle one of 2 ways. I can create a new circle right on the face here, and I can use this inference point, right? If I go slowly enough, I can drag and I can snap to the center, right? That's called an inference point. So I can snap to the center, I can drag along an edge, an end point, right? And there's different colors for different inference points. The midpoint is this cyan or light blue. So you'll get used to what the different inference points are. So I can snap to the center, and I can go ahead and I can drag a circle out with a radius of 1. That's one way to make that inside circle, right? Concentric with the outside. Another thing I could do is I could use the offset command. And what the offset command does is it creates parallel edges, right, at any specified distance, right? So I just clicked on this face, and it's a 4-sided, right, rectangle. So it's going to create a new 4-sided rectangle within or outside of that shape. So I can create a parallel entity, in this case a circle, that is 1 inch inward, right? So that offset from the outside edge of my original circle to the outside edge of my new circle is 1 inch. Right? So it's 2 ways to do the same thing. So if I wanted to push-pull this, I first want to delete and get rid of this center circle, right? Because this is going to be a through hole. I can push-pull everything but that face. In this case, I'm going to push-pull this to a depth of 6 inches, which I just did. If I wanted to, I can select it. I can use my Move tool here, and I can move it from a reference point to a reference point if I wanted to keep this neat and keep it tracking along the red axis. And now I'm going to keep going. The next shape is a little bit of an odd one. We have an arc with basically kind of like a little cutout on the inside. And the way that I'm going to create this is I'm going to start by creating this horizontal line at a distance of 2 inches. Now when I draw like this, just like we did with that very first shape, is I can drag and track along the red axis, and then I can type in the distance of 2 inches, go up in the blue for, in this case, 1 inch, 2, 1, and then 2. And now I'm done drawing my lines. I'm going to hit escape. Now what I can do is I can use the arc tool. There's different options for the arc tool, but by default I'm going to choose a 2-point arc. So I can click on one edge and the other edge, right, this endpoint here. So I just started and ended my arc, and I'm going to track along the blue axis for the bulge. And the bulge in this case is going to give us the height of the shape, which is 3 inches. So 3, hit enter. Push pull at a depth of 5 inches. I have my shape, and we are cruising. So this next shape is a little bit of a tricky one, just at first sight. But if you really notice and you evaluate the front view, the front face of this shape, that's where the arrow is pointing, you'll see that we have essentially a square, right? A 4-inch by 4-inch square with 2 semicircles on the outside. So if you can really break it down and visualize it that way, it's just simply being a square in the front with a semicircle on either side. Then we can create that shape, right, as a 2-dimensional object. And then we'll worry about making it 3-dimensional. So I'm going to go 4 inches, 4 inches, and hit enter. And I could use the arc tool to create my semicircle here. Or I could have done it with a full circle, using my inference points here, midpoint to that endpoint. Kind of just delete what I don't want. Undo that. And before I extrude, what I'm going to choose to do is put in that circle that belongs in the middle. Now to get it to be exactly in the middle, I'm going to use my inferencing. Right? So if I hover over this midpoint for a few seconds and I start to drag down, you'll see that it's still referencing that point. And I can do that from this midpoint and that midpoint, right? So I'm now tracking from the center of that semicircle and that midpoint. So SketchUp's really intuitive in that sense, where if I let it know, right, I kind of wake up that inference point and I wake up this other inference point, it now knows that I want to reference those 2 inference points. So I can click, specify a radius of 1 inch, hit enter, and I can delete before I push pull. I'm going to push pull this for a distance of 4. And now we have a shape that just about looks right. And I say just about looks right because we have these 2 edges. I'm sure there's 4 edges, right? Because we have 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. That we don't really want to see, right? They're not part of our reference image. So I've triple clicked this, right? I've selected the whole thing. What I can do is I can right click and I can choose soften smooth edges. And then when I do that, right, my tray comes back up. This soften smooth edges is here. I can make some adjustments, but I don't really need to. If you look here, I can see all of this hidden geometry, right? These dashed lines. But when I click off of it, because I soften and smooth the edges, those 4 lines go away. They're still there, right? They're still part of the geometry of the shape, but they are no longer visible. I'll close that tray out again. And we're going to keep moving. So the last 3 shapes we did an additive technique, right? We created 3, or I did, right? I created 3 2-dimensional shapes and then I pulled them out. For this next shape, it's a little bit of an odd one. I'm going to actually do a subtractive technique. I'm going to start with a solid block. Then I'm going to draw out the profile and I'm going to subtract away. So what I'll do is I will start with a rectangular prism. That is the overall size of the shape. I'm trying to get a little bit closer to the right axis. So the kind of footprint of this shape is 5 inches by 6 inches. And I'm going to push pull up for the total height, which is 4 inches. Okay, so now I have a block that's the overall shape. And what I want to do now is I want to use the tape measure tool to create some references. So you can see there's a bit of a vertical line that belongs here, and that is 2 inches over from the edge. So again, I click on the edge here, 2, hit enter. From the bottom, I go 2 inches up. And that's really all we need to make the shape, because with the line tool, I can now go from this inference point to the intersection here, to this intersection, and back to the corner. And I can push pull all the way back and release, and it's going to carve that away. All the way back and release, and it carves it away. And to get rid of these guides, I can go to Edit, Delete Guides, or I could have just selected them and deleted them manually. Now, this next shape, this pyramid shape, is another kind of unique problem for us. Right? The way I'm going to create this is I'm going to start with a footprint, just like I did for the last shape, of, in this case, 5 by 4. Now, to create this pyramid, I can't really push-pull, as I've been doing, because this is going to create a box. So what we need to use here is some kind of creative method. What we're going to do is we're going to create the edges that we would see when viewing it from the top. Right? If we looked at this from the top view of a pyramid, that's what we would see. So we want to take this 2-dimensional shape and make it 3-dimensional. But we're going to do it in a different way. Right? We're not using push-pull. What I actually want to do is I want to use the Move tool, and I'm going to select the intersection of this X. So I just clicked once, and now I'm going to drag. And when I do that, sometimes it's going to behave in a way that I don't want it to. So if I wanted to make sure that I was able to move that intersection vertically, as I want to do here, I'm going to hit up on my keyboard. And once I do that, it automatically tracks on the blue axis. So now I can drag this up to a height of 3 inches and hit enter. And now I have my pyramid. Right? And sometimes the bottom will be missing, so I can just fill that in. If that doesn't work, I can try healing the shape. There we go. Now another thing you'll notice is these shapes are all white, and this is this kind of purplish gray. And the default color in SketchUp, remember we said that SketchUp is just edges and faces. The default color in SketchUp has a face with 2 different colors. Right? There's white on one side, and then there's this grayish purple on the other. We can actually go inside here. We can see, if I go far enough, we have these white faces, but they are on the inside of our shape instead of the outside. So what I can do is I can triple click, right click, and I can choose reverse faces, and it kind of flips it right side out. Now the next shape is going to introduce us to another tool that I use quite often when I'm modeling in SketchUp, and that's the Follow Me tool. So what the Follow Me tool does, I can kind of just show you before we make this cone. What the Follow Me tool does is it takes a shape and instead of push-pulling it, right, which we know extrudes a shape perpendicular to its face, right? So whenever we push-pull, it creates a 90-degree angle from that face. So instead of only, kind of extruding in one particular direction, what the Follow Me tool will do is it will allow us to select a face, and it will allow us to drag that face. Right now it's basically just did what a push-pull would do, but it can drag it along a path, right, in multiple directions, and it's super useful. So we're actually going to use the Follow Me tool to create this conical shape. So we know that for the Follow Me tool, we always need 2 things. We need a profile, right, to extrude, and we need a path for that profile to follow. So if you look at a cone and you think about, well, what path would I have And what's the profile that's being swept along that path? Well, the path is, in this case, a circle with a radius of 2 inches, and that profile is a triangle. So I want to start a triangle, vertical line here, 6 inches tall. I'm going to use inferencing to make sure that this shape remains coplanar. Right? I've hovered on the bottom here, dragged, tracking on the red axis, out to the edge, and then I've come back. So now I basically have half of the triangle that I would need to make the full cone. I have a path here, and I'm going to use the Follow Me tool to drag this profile around the path. And sometimes it gets a little crazy, but if you close it properly, it's all good in the end. Now, but because sometimes it goes a little crazy, we can be a little bit more accurate with the Follow Me tool. What we can do is we can actually, in the program, we can pre-select the path, so that this way we don't have to drag it around. So if I pre-select the circle, it could be the face or the edge, and I go and I initiate the Follow Me tool, you'll see that as soon as I select Follow Me, it looks like my selection disappeared. But the program still knows that I've selected that profile. And I know that because at the bottom left here, it's telling me select a face to extrude. So I'm in the tool, right, in the Follow Me tool. I've pre-selected my path, and all I need to do is just click on a face. It's going to automatically drag it around. In this case, it did so, but it created it backwards again, or inside out. So I'll reverse faces once more. Even though you don't really have to. Okay, so for these last two shapes, I'm going to use a combination of the techniques that I've used throughout this exercise. So for shape number 8, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a footprint of 5 inches by 4 inches. I'm going to push-pull that up for the height here, which is 7 inches. I'm going to create some references here and push-pull away. Push-pull down at a depth of 3 inches. And that's it for that shape. I'm going to get rid of those guidelines just because I like to do that as I go. And this last shape is basically just a cylinder with some cutaways. And you can see, it's one of the issues with working in 3D is that sometimes we think that we're in line with the rest of the shapes, but we're actually not. But that's okay, because we have the Move tool. It's going to allow us to put that in the proper place. I'm going to keep working on it over here for now. And that's it for this exercise.